And a good afternoon to you. How the heck is everybody doing? Ryan in Sacktown here, the King's Court live, 2 p.m. Jerry Reynolds, Tuesday. Are you excited? Jerry's going to be joining us 2:30 Pacific. Obviously Pacific. Patrick, I threw that in Pacific. You're on the East. I get it. Eastern Conference Finals kicking off tonight. We've got another busy day here on If You Don't Like That. We've got the King's Court right now. Jerry Reynolds Tuesday. Again, he'll be here at 2:30. We also have a 5 o'clock open forum with Grant. And then we are going to be on after the conclusion of the Pacers and the Celtics tonight from Boston. We'll do a little post-game show, open forum. We'll get that all out to you. You guys can call in, certainly get your chat in. Really busy show yesterday. Shout out to Chad. Shout out to TC using the phone line, 916-399-3748. You know I'm going to slip one day. I said this yesterday. It's inevitable. I'm going to give out my cell phone number at some point accidentally, and we'll see if anybody catches on to it. MC, yes, please. If you are here, give us a thumbs up on YouTube. If you're watching on X, I know you can't do a thumbs up, but give us a like. Give us a retweet. We're streaming both to Grant's X channel, my X channel, and also multiple YouTube forums. So that way you can pick up the show. If you can't catch the whole thing, you can get the replay. Also, the audio of the King's Court Live goes up on the King's Court. If you listen to the King's Court shoot around this morning, we talked a little WNBA basketball. Yeah. Did you just hear that right? Yes. WNBA basketball. What's going on? It's pretty damn cool to see women's basketball getting a second wind. I mean, for a while, the WNBA, I don't want to say it was a laughing stock, but nobody took it seriously, or not a lot of people took it seriously. And I get part of that is due to Sacramento not having a team anymore. Could that change? Maybe. But, you know, Jerry, he was the GM of the Monarchs for a while. He ended up retiring in 2003. Monarchs won a championship in 2005. So I kind of want to talk to him about that. I want to see what his thoughts are on the resurgence of women's basketball. Many will point to the stars coming out of college. Caitlin Clark, I watched that game. I saw the conclusion of it yesterday. I was really impressed with the skill set and the basketball IQ that I saw. Caitlin, she is a freak, man. The fact that, did anybody see the highlight of her? I know she's famous for the logo threes. She must have pulled that three ball from a good 35 feet, maybe 35 feet. Very interesting. We've got some news on the all defensive teams in the NBA. No Sacramento Kings. You remember I was kind of like, why are people asking De'Aaron Fox about that during the play-in time? They're like, oh, Coach Brown, do you think De'Aaron will be first-team defense? Come on. I mean, I get De'Aaron his steals. Excellent, right? But I didn't think he was going to land anywhere on the first or second team. Nobody on the Kings, because it's positionless. The voters went big. I mean, the voters went really big. So if you look at that first team all NBA headlined by Rudy Gobert, first team all defense NBA, you'll see. I'm not going to read them off right now. One thing to know, both your Sacramento Kings, De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, each received votes. Fox got a first team vote and a second team vote. Domantas got, I believe, 2 seconds and 1 first. So he scored a little bit higher, 4 voting points over De'Aaron's 3, but it was not enough. But hell, if I would have told you at the beginning of the season that a couple of Sacramento Kings were going to get all defensive votes, what would you have said to me? You probably would have called me crazy. Karen, how you doing? What's going on? I'm trying to figure this out. Let's see. Goat dash turquoise dash white dash orange dash and dash purple dash blue dash peaches. Is that supposed to be an emoji? I think that was an emoji that got spelt out from Karen. That's all right. Probably talking about Gary Gerald. Jerry Reynolds, he is the GOAT. The fact that we get him on Tuesdays, it's amazing. I love talking with him, and he doesn't know this yet. We're going to play a little game with Jerry today. Here's what we're going to do. The Sea-Dog, he'll remember this. So Open Forum Wednesdays, we used to go a different way on Grant shows. And I did this one thing with him where it was it was one word with name associations, or, the association of certain objects, whatever it may be. But it was a lot of fun. I gave him some names. I gave him some different teams that he had been involved in. And Jerry, he's done it just about all in basketball. So I have a few questions for him, and I want to see what he says in one word. And yeah, we'll give him a little grace. We'll give him a couple extra words. It doesn't have to be one, but I'm going to put him on the spot because I think it will be a very, very fun conversation. As you can know, I said you can call the show 916-399-3748. You can text the show. I'll be monitoring that. You can call through Restream as you normally do. 48 already checked in or have checked in, watching live here on the King's Court. We really, really appreciate it so much. And again, we've got so much programming coming your way, regardless of whether or not the Kings are playing. The offseason is kind of the busy time, actually. We talked about it last night. We laid it out last night. There is not a lot of off time in between now and when things really pick up. You've got the draft that's coming up. Then before you know it, we are right into, and I mean right into, California Classic, Summer League, and then football starts going, training camps. Next thing you know, Kings reporting for Media Day training camp. Football will be ongoing, and it's going to be October, and it's going to be Kings basketball again. And will this team look dramatically different from how this team is currently constructed? Are we going to get any big moves, the swings for the fences? We talked yesterday about which Kings are probably the most tradable out of everybody when you're looking at their contracts, their upside, what they've done in the league. And then we've talked about the guys that probably, if they were going to be traded, the order in which I think the organization would categorize them. So we don't need to loom too much more on that. But I do want to bring this up because we were talking about De'Aaron Fox's salary. And you know what? De'Aaron's making fair money. I don't have a problem with it. In fact, this last season, De'Aaron was the 12th highest paid point guard in the NBA. You know who was behind De'Aaron? Jamal Murray. Does that surprise anybody? I know they signed contracts at different times, but looking at the list and looking at how some of these guys are paid, especially the point guards, it's interesting. Who do you think? Well, it's pretty easy. The highest paid point guard in the league, that's Steph Curry. He made 53.8 this last year. Then, who do you think's behind him? There's a lot of names there. You got Ja Morant, Kyrie, Trae Young, Luka. What order do you think that falls in, and who do you think is behind De'Aaron? Now, one name that we've talked about a little bit is Donovan Mitchell. Grant doesn't think Donovan Mitchell is a likelihood to Sacramento. I think it's a very small, minute likelihood as well. But there are, looking at the salaries. Yep, Curry is number one. Curry, my bad. Yep. Romanowski, Smurf Turf for life. I love it. My mom and my brother just ran a relay. I think it was the Great Potato Relay, or it was a 10K. And good for them. They both did that. That was just this last weekend, and they started on the blue. So, Romanowski, you been on the blue before? The blue's pretty cool because they were the first team to do that. And then other teams hopped on the bandwagon. In fact, for a while, Boise State, I believe, had to give permission to other schools to use blue. And I know Folsom High School, they're blue now too, which is a little bit different for the high school game. But yes, you are right, Pond Dog. Indeed, it is Steph Curry. We did say that. But Boise, Idaho, my goodness, what a beautiful city. What an underrated city. Anybody that's been to Boise in the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years, they've revitalized the downtown area. In the downtown area, it's so cool. It just pops up out of nowhere, and everything's so close there. I love that. At San Diego State, we were spread out. You had campus, and then 10 minutes up the road, Mission Valley, and we had a college town, but not like where everything was walking distance or biking distance, kind of like UC Davis, right? UC Davis, they're notorious for that. That is straight up a college town. San Luis Obispo, straight up a college town. Isla Vista. Anybody checking in from Isla Vista in Santa, or basically Santa Barbara, but Isla Vista, my goodness. Now that is a college town on the ocean. But getting back to Boise, it's a great time. And there's so much to do there. I know a lot of people from California have fled to Idaho and such, but I try to get there as much as I can. Where did everybody go to school? If you went to college, put it in there. I don't care. I want to see where everybody went to school. I want to see where we shake out. If you went to the trades, that's totally fine too. If you didn't go to college, all good too. To each their own. Everybody is different. It was so interesting to hear Jay come on the open forum last week and talk about his experiences at Arizona State University. He's doing everything digitally. And I knew that existed, but I thought the online colleges were kind of like anybody gets in. Not the case anymore. So for Jay, it works, right? But for some others, I mean, some people pay for just the college experience and not the education. That's secondary, but very cool that some universities, bigger universities, are doing that. I mean, don't you feel bad too for the graduates this year? I believe it's the same class that went through no graduation for high school because of COVID, or maybe it's not that class. Maybe that's 26. Got to go back and look, but that's a rough go. That's when everything changed. Digital learning, my goodness. So, anyways, put your colleges in the chat if you want. Again, you can call the show 916-399-3748. Jerry Reynolds will be here at 2:30 Pacific. Looking forward to that. Getting back to the point guard conversation, because yesterday, and we talked about it too on the King, or not the King's Court, but our scrum last night, the Monday night scrum. Look, De'Aaron Fox paid the next couple of years, 34.8 this season. Next season, 37, basically 0.1. Now, regardless of not, if De'Aaron Fox leaves or stays in Sacramento, what do you think his value is? Kings fans, because you're going to have Keegan Murray coming up for a contract at that same time. Remember, the team has an option in 25-26 for Keegan Murray. I'm sure the Kings have probably exercised that option or will do it at the first available moment. But then in 26-27, it will be a situation where Keegan can test the market. The Kings will have the ability to match any offer sheets in 26-27 that Keegan may get from other teams. But I'm looking at the payroll for the top 20 guards or point guards this year. Let's run down them. Damian Lillard, 44.6. How about Luka? 43 basically 43 million, 43.03. Then you've got Trae Young. Trae Young is at 43.03. Luka and Trae, same level. Now, if I look at that, I think Luka's pay is fair. I think the market is right if you talk about the separation between Luka and De'Aaron. Now, Trae Young, I don't know, is he up in that category? Do you think he should be making that much money? And not Houston, but the Hawks, they've got the top pick in the draft this year. And they were another team that people were saying, look, they may need to make a few moves. They might rebuild. Interesting to see what they'll do there. Then this one surprised me. This one shocked me. How about this? Fred VanVleet. What do you think Fred VanVleet made this last year in the NBA? Let's get some of these colleges up here first. Salute. What's up, Moss? How you doing, man? Hope you are doing well. Yes, they are. Lillard and Kyrie, no doubt. Your uncle is in Boise. Love it. Moss, Sac State. He's a Hornet. Condog. Delta College. Love it. Good basketball program at Delta College. Romanowski, ARC, Santa Rosa, JC checking in. Mark Graves. Love it. You traded Hallie. You can't let Fox walk. I don't know about that. Well, you can't let him walk. We're 100% together on that. But again, De'Aaron's going to be wanting to get paid around those numbers. And if you look at what Sabonis is going to be making, and I get it's premature, a little premature to be having this conversation in some people's opinions, but it's not to me. The Cavs are having the conversation about Mitchell right now, and he's still got a full year on his contract. Appreciate it, Ash. Throw it up, baby. Thumbs up, hit the like button. Really, really appreciate it. Mark's saying $40 million for Van Vliet. Close. 42.84 this last year. That is a lot of money. Adam checking in. Scottsdale Community College. That's not their thing. Is it, Adam? Really? The Fighting Artichokes? I mean, if I had to choose a vegetable that was going to fight, I don't think it's an artichoke. I mean, what vegetable would you want to be your guy? Like if you were going to be in a back alley and you needed some backup from a veggie, who's it going to be? I mean, it's a good question. You know, onions, kind of like an onion bomb. You could make their eyes run, kind of like tear gas. What else do we got? Do we have some spiky vegetables? Maybe an avocado, like a non-ripe avocado, one that's really hard. Adam's saying 100% it is. I think a pineapple would be a really good one. Artichokes are pretty spiky. Ash says, yeah, but you got to pull them. Yeah, you know, Ash, you bring up a decent point. What about corn? I feel like corn could do some damage. It's kind of like little baton. And then you got the husks. Could you do anything with the husks? We're getting off topic here. But getting back to the point guard list, Ja Morant checking in at $39.44 million. SGA is going to be due a big extension. He's at 35.8. Now, that's the name that I was looking at on this list for a simple reason. I think it's a decent comp to De'Aaron Fox. OKC, smaller market. Everybody runs their offense between OKC and Sacramento for the most part through those guys. I know Domantas Sabonis is a big catalyst for the Kings offense as well. But Van Vliet, man, would you take that contract on in Sacramento? Would you take Fred Van Vliet for $42 million? That is tough. Darius Garland, 39.4. Ben Simmons. You guys remember that? Ben Simmons. I remember not last offseason, but the offseason before the Kings made the playoffs. Ben Simmons talk. Ben Simmons, would he fit in Sacramento? Would you trade De'Aaron Fox for Ben Simmons? Well, he's on the hook for $35.4 million. You know, Lonzo Ball, I don't blame him, but if you're the Bulls, it's like one of these moments. He picked up his option. I believe it was over $20 million for this coming season. Jamal Murray, to me, underpaid, 31.65. How about Drew Holiday? He is slightly above De'Aaron at 35.44 this last season. Now, Brunson, talk about the deal of them all. Brunson making $26 million this season. You know that number is going to go up, but we could keep going down the list. Now, Derek White of the Celtics. I like Derek White's game. Jerry loves Derek White's game. He is, I think he's fair at that number. He's going to probably command some more, $17.5 million. DeJounte Murray, 16, and then Markelle Fultz, 16.6. Feels like a contract that he will not get again. I don't think he's going to be making that much money. Condog hopping back into the conversation. Then Peanuts throwing allergies at people is scary. Yeah, that would be kind of like the nuke of vegetables and fruits. Peanuts are a nut. They're not in either category. So I guess that's not a good one. What about a watermelon? That's like a bowling ball. Would you do a Gobert type trade for Fox 5 first-round draft picks? Hell yes, I would. Goodbye, De'Aaron. I would do that for anybody on the Kings roster, especially with the new CBA that goes into effect. You're not going to see 5 first round draft picks anymore. It's hilarious that that happened. And in fact, that really screwed up the market for many people in free agency, because then you had guys looking for that type of value. I shouldn't say free agency, with trade deadline and free agency to a degree, but it screwed things up. It really did, because when guys hit free agency, they looked at what Gobert got, what the Utah Jazz got in return for. Okay, I'm not even going to try to say that. A legume, not like tree nuts. Let's see. I don't hate, now we're getting into the weeds a little bit, the idea of Fox for Mitchell straight up, and maybe we could sign Jared Allen. Yeah, Jared Allen, he made 20 million this last year. I think it was 20 or 22. Not sure if I'm ready to get into bed with Jared Allen at that number. I've got to think about that, because does Jared Allen really allow you to space the floor the way that you need to play him and Sabonis at the same time? Got to think about that for sure. But it's fun. It's fun to play GM this time of year. Certainly, it's a little bit nerve-wracking for Sacramento Kings fans right now, because the Kings have put themselves in a position where they have been patient. They've been a little bit more reactive rather than proactive. And now they're stuck in a place where you have teams that have potential. We talked about it last night. San Antonio Spurs, not only Wemby, what if they got Monk? They've got the money to do it, but they also have 2 picks in the first 8 this year in the draft. Man, that is rough. A lot of talk about Danny Ainge, director or dirtiest player in the game. Dude is behind that desk. He is nasty. He knows how to fill a office with just a chest of picks. Like, he's got this magic chest sitting on his desk, and only he knows the combination to it, and it's filled with first round picks. We're getting some more proposed trades in here. May not space the floor, but maybe it's coach or fits coach's system better. Yeah, could be. I don't know if we know what Mike Brown's system's going to be. No fault of his own. He rode the hot hand the year the Kings made the playoffs. The offense was absolutely incredible, but then the lack of defense caught up with the Kings, and now you're seeing a crossroads in a way for the Kings, because you don't, to me, if the Kings want to have long-term success, it's got to be the way they did it at the end of the season. And did you notice how there was like a little bit of fire? There was a little bit of, there was a chip on their shoulder, because they're injured, they're getting screwed. Remember, 3 times in the 2-minute report in the last 6 games. That's rough. That's really rough. That is why you usually want to have some fat reserves. Yes, fat reserves on your schedule. And when I say fat reserves, that's playing the terrible teams: Detroit, Charlotte, Portland, undermanned. Those are how you build the fat reserves for a rainy day when you know you're going to get screwed, because inevitably that happens in an 82 game season. But as I said, the system, what's it going to be? Give Danny Ainge his flowers. You have to. He played several sports. He was good while in Sacramento as a player too. Yeah. Jerry and Grant talk all the time about their tennis matches with Danny Ainge. Let's see. Who was the dirtiest player ever? Lambier, the pasty gangster. Let me think about that. I'll pose it to everybody else. Who is the dirtiest player in the history of the NBA? What do you think? And here's what I'm going to tell you. What I think you need to consider with that criteria: you have to consider the era they played in and how the game was played back then, how the game was refereed back then. So, for instance, Lambier, the Bad Boys Pistons, it got physical. That was physical basketball. Physical, yeah. Well done, Condog. Woo! Well done, dude. Good job, man. That is why you are corn dog. Romanowski, he's saying Rodman. Are the Jazz considered a fat reserve? No, no, because the Kings always seemingly get the Jazz like on the second night of a back to back or the first night of a back to back with travel included. I think there's an argument, and I know it's topical. I know it's fresh. I think there's a pretty damn good argument that Draymond Green might be the dirtiest player that I've seen in my lifetime because, like I said, take into account the era these guys played in. Draymond's era, the game is not played that way any longer. Rodman's not a bad name. Rodman's not a bad name. That's true. He would mix it up. The Kings should not trade Fox. They just need to talk to the guy to change and adjust his game. And that's all. Baki, it's not that easy, dude. Dude. So I appreciate the take, and I appreciate your basketball knowledge. We're past the time of sitting down and saying, hey, this is the way you need to play. He is going to be in his 8th year. And I'm not trying to shine the spotlight on De'Aaron because the whole point of this conversation, going back to the Kings Court podcast on Sunday, anyone but Dallas, the margins between out of the play-in and in the Western Conference Finals are like this. Like the margins are that small. So it's not like I don't want to sit here and say the Kings are like almost in full rebuild mode, blow it up, get rid of Fox, try to trade Keegan. None of that. But the question becomes, are there moves out there outside of the draft where the Kings can even the playing field a little bit with some of these teams that are already ahead of schedule and ahead of them? If you look at next season, yes, exactly right, Matthew. The West is so competitive, and that's what chaps my ass about these last 2 seasons with the Kings. No fault of they let Curry go off for 50 in Game 7, but that last year, great example. The Kings get past Game 7. You very likely could have seen the Kings. You probably would have seen the Kings in the Western Conference Finals. The Kings get past the Pelicans this year in the play-in. I would give it a 50-50 shot that the Kings would have beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, especially, and I'm going to say assuming the Kings got Malik back. So other teams are going to make moves this offseason and make themselves better. We know that. So what can the Kings do to not only make up for the step to the side they took last year, but take a step forward? I'm tired of saying catch up. Why can't the Kings get a step ahead? There's no reason they can't. Knock it out of the park with the draft. Monty McNair has done that. Grant does not think a draft pick is going to make a difference to this team this year. Grant thinks that pick is going to be traded. I don't know. I think that pick might stay. Now, if there's a big name out there, that's different. But, we're kind of in that middle ground right now. It's not up until the draft, and we're not there yet. Probably another couple weeks, maybe a week and a half. Then we're going to start hearing some rumblings. What's Phoenix going to do? Is Phoenix going to blow it up? Are they going to look to maybe move up in the draft? Do the Kings have anybody or anything that Phoenix may want, and vice versa? Do the Kings or does Phoenix have anything the Kings need? How about Grayson Allen? Grayson Allen's incredible. So that's another name. Jerry Reynolds. He is a Grayson Allen guy. Matthew hopping back in. We may fill the bench with better consistency. It's hard to say. I don't disagree with you. We do need to fill the bench. The Kings tried to do that last season. It just didn't work out as well. But I will give them credit because their goals that they did set for the offseason and the next season, they hit them. They needed a little bit more than what they got. And unfortunately, Chris Duarte doesn't necessarily pan out. I felt like he had an up and down season towards the end of the season. I did not like his shot selection. And then Sasha Vezenkov, injuries, the story of his first year in the NBA. You got to give him an incomplete, in my opinion, as a grade because you just did not see that much of them. And when you did, usually the Kings were in a position like break glass, it's an emergency, pull the tab, and that's when Sasha came in. As promised, you know it, Tuesdays are Jerry Reynolds Tuesday. Our man, Jerry Reynolds, welcome in. What's up, buddy?
Well, not much. Just a beautiful day out here in Roseville, and
Yeah.
got my walk in. Listen to little Rolling Stones this morning. Kind of get me going. I needed a little pick me up, and they still do that.
There you. What's on the Jerry Reynolds playlist when you go for your walks?
Well, I like Adele. I like
Okay.
Amy Winehouse. Certainly Bob Seger, Bob Dylan. The favorites: Rolling Stones, Creedence Clearwater.
Nice.
A little so, and certainly Chris Stapleton of late. He's pretty special. So I'm kind of varied.
Yeah. You got to hit that shuffle button. You never know what's going to come up, and usually it's something
I've
good.
got my favorites. And so kind of Van Morrison. Forgot Van. He's one of my favorites. So
There
anyway,
you
yeah, at least gives me something to kind of get the blood pumping a little bit. When you're 80 years old, man, it's pumping slow. You got to get it speeded up.
I would normally disagree with you, but I get it, Jerry. I'm 39. It's hard to get the blood pumping now.
No, it don't get easier. So hey, what are you gonna do?
And what you gonna do? One quick question from Haunted Horse, and then we'll talk some basketball.
Okay.
Does Jerry like the Beatles?
Yeah, I really do. When I was a kid, when they were I was really a Beatles fan, and I didn't like the Rolling Stones. And quite honestly, here it is. I'm 80 years old, and I like the Rolling Stones better. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's sort of like I wasn't an Elvis fan in the day when he was great, and I was a Ricky Nelson fan. And now I love Elvis. I just think he's maybe the greatest entertainer ever. But so, as you age, you change a little bit. I always say too, it's like Frank Sinatra. I never liked him at all, because my parents did. And now it's like, my gosh, he was really great.
He's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So, it's, you change, your tastes change a little bit. It's not the saying that some of the ones I still like, of course, the Beatles are terrific, but especially they've just so many things that they've done as a group or individually. So
no doubt, people still make that trip overseas to take that walk across the street and recreate that album cover. Popular trip still.
Yeah, I probably won't do that, but
yeah, I know how much you love airplanes. So
yeah, I was gonna say they'll have to bring it here in Northern California.
There you go. The one thing Jerry does have in common with Elvis is you share a Taylor.
Yeah, actually, I guess I do. Yeah, I didn't know that, but so maybe I feel better about now that you mentioned that. Really, it was the so-called Taylor of Elvis Presley. I'm not convinced, but they charged like it.
Sure.
I was going to say I would kind of like to have seen some of his work with Elvis, to be sure that I was getting the same thing. But I damn sure paid for it.
Yeah, I know. Workout pants, they're everything pants now ever since you had to get them in Memphis. But hey, let's talk some basketball since we last met. Western Conference Finals, Eastern Conference Finals set. Let's start in the East because you got game one of that kicking off between Boston and Indy tonight. What did you think of game 7 and specifically the way Indy came out and shot the ball?
Well, yeah, they're a terrific offensive team, and I mean, they were a good offensive team before they got Siakam. And, to me, he just kind of put them over the edge because they got a guy that can score in the low post and play one-on-one when need be. But I think they can give Boston a tough go because they really do have the ability to score the ball. And obviously Tyrese is an excellent player, but they've got TJ McConnell off the bench impacts the game like few backup points. I like the team. Of course, I was, pulling for him because
Sure.
of Larry's being involved as a consultant again and being a friend with Rick Carlisle and Kevin Pritchard. So I've known that franchise pretty well for years. But I was, and having said that, I just admired the heck out of the Knicks. I mean, they just played their butts off and just ran out of players and ran out of energy. I mean, but it was a marvelous series.
It was a great series. And, I really appreciated the New York fan base at the end, giving them the respect that they deserved because they left it all on the floor. I know you hear that cliche a lot, Jerry, but to see so many stars go down and just see guy after guy step up for this team, what's that mean for free agents possibly looking at New York this year? Does that give them a little bit more confidence trying that team out?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I think the problem with New York is, quite honestly, it's just the cap room. I mean, I don't think they have any, so it'd require trades and things. But
Yeah.
I think if they could just get and stay healthy, they should run it back. I mean, if OG Anunoby would stay healthy, which probably he's never done before. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's a heck of a player, but he's like several others in the league that miss about half the games. And then Randall, I mean, it would give them the low post guy they really missed. And that, and of course, Mitchell Robinson and Hartenstein. I mean, I think they'd be a serious contender just with reasonable health. And, Alec Burks came in, as a late pickup. If they're able to keep him, he's a nice off the bench guy as well.
He is, yeah. 3 ex-Sacramento Kings combined for 91 in that game. 91 points. Let's move over to the West. Game 7. Minnesota seems to me, Minnesota is the most complete team that I see in this playoffs. Just the way that they play together. Anthony Edwards not playing well. The team picks him up. He gets his game going defensively. They hold the Nuggets to under 100 points in all 4 games they won on that series. What are you seeing from Minnesota, and how do you see them as contenders going forward? Do you think they come out of the West?
I do. I think defensively they're, and Dallas is extremely good defensively too now. I mean, I never thought I'd say that
Right.
middle of the year, but it's true. They're very good defensively, and Minnesota's very, very good defensively. I like. I think maybe Minnesota has a little bit of edge on the bench. And certainly they have a lot of size. I think it kind of comes down to stars.
Mhm.
I think with Carl Anthony and Edwards against Luka and Kyrie, they're different kinds of players.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those cases where you've got whichever set of stars really are the most productive will probably win the series.
So we've talked a little bit or a lot about Anthony Edwards being that throwback guard. Jerry, to see him go through the first half he did and then get himself back in the game defensively, never give up on his teammates, and his teammates never give up on him, does that just kind of solidify that this guy might be different?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm not quite ready to put him in the Michael Jordan class. I
Sure.
know, I think some are. I would pump the brakes on that, but I do think he might be moving into Kobe Bryant territory.
Wow.
Because I mean, he's a baller. I mean, he plays 40 minutes, and when he's not shooting effectively, he finds a way to be valuable, and that's that's a little rare. I mean, he's got a little leadership about him. I think he's probably easier to play with than Kobe was, maybe, or Jordan, but
Mhm.
but yeah, he could be the best player in this league in a couple of years. I'm not saying he will be, but he certainly has that kind of special athleticism and strength to, he can just go through people. His shot making, like every player, comes and goes. There's nights when
Sure.
long jump shots don't go in for everybody.
Yes, this is true. Jerry joining us here on Jerry Reynolds Tuesday on the King's Court Live. I've been talking about the last couple days, especially since Dallas made the conference finals. I said anybody but Dallas because at the trade deadline, Kings had a better record than Dallas. They looked better on the court as a team than Dallas. Dallas makes those two moves that we've talked about. Gafford, Washington Jr., they have to give up a first-round draft pick on one of them, but they didn't give up too much, and it got them just that much better to take them over the top and get them to the finals. Jerry, what's the margin of difference like between good and very good teams? Can it just be a couple small pickups like that at the deadline?
Absolutely. I mean, really, parity in the NBA is more like the NFL anymore, where the gap just isn't that much, and certainly injuries play a bigger role than they used to. Yeah, I think Dallas is a great example. They were heading nowhere,
Yeah,
and they picked those two guys up, and basically two starters, and of course Lively, the rookie's gotten better as the
sure.
years went along, and so. Just changed their team. They had a good offensive team. Now they've got a better one, but now they've got a much better defensive team. And I think the same thing could be said for Indiana in a different way. They were a good team, but they weren't going to do anything in the playoffs had they not got Siakam, because they didn't
Yes.
really have that guy they could go to when they were being defended, because he's a guy that can go score for you against good defense and in low and mid range. So it's one of those things you put Siakam with the Kings, they might still be playing. You put two starting level players, or at least one really top level starting player with the Kings, they might have got moved on. But that's the way it is. You just don't know what deals were there for the Kings.
Sure.
That's the hard part. I mean, you don't really know. I mean, they certainly could have. I have no doubt they were trying to do some things, but sometimes a deal just can't be made that you like or you think will work out for you long term, and you don't want to do something just for a month unless you got a bunch of 30 plus. You kind of want to keep things in your own window, I think.
Yeah, and it's a great point, Jerry. Jerry Reynolds joining us on the Kings Court Live. I want to talk a little bit about something that not a lot of people are talking about, and maybe I'm off my rocker, Jerry, but there's a lot of talk about Cleveland and their situation with JB Bickerstaff. There's a lot of talk about Donovan Mitchell. Are they going to commit to him long term? He still has another year on his deal. You look at De'Aaron Fox's deal, Jerry. He signed through this year and next year, and then he is a free agent. Is the situation with De'Aaron actually a little bit more dire than we think, where the organization doesn't have as much time like through next season to make a decision on whether or not he's the guy?
Well, that's a great question, probably not being asked enough. It doesn't change the fact you might be a little goofy. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Fair enough.
That's always a possibility there.
This is true.
Great thought and question. I think the Kings, really I wouldn't rush into it, but I would say by the end of this year, coming season, you'd want to feel comfortable knowing that he's your guy, and that because if you're going to commit, it's going to tie your cap up forever. And
yes, so, exactly.
But I mean, you wouldn't want to go into in my mind, if you're convinced he's your guy, you sure wouldn't want to go into the last year and let him be a free agent, because I'm not saying you'd lose him, because you still could pay him more than anybody else can. It's like the old Weber thing. Everybody assumed that Webb would leave in free agency. I never thought he would, because he could make more money by staying in Sacramento, and that's exactly why he stayed. Webb's like no different. He's a human, and if he could have made 30 million more by going somewhere else, he would have went.
Sure.
I mean, that's as a professional, you probably are kind of obligated to think along those lines to some degree.
Yeah, no, great point. And I guess the reason I brought it up is you look at the crossroads, and I don't want to compare players, but DeMarcus Cousins, right? DeMarcus was going to be in a position to get paid more here in Sacramento, and the Kings had clearly made a decision. We're not comfortable giving you that money and making this your team, and they had to move on. Sabonis gets the extension in the offseason last season. Do you think that was a little bit too early, and we're not talking enough about that? Could that money have been used elsewhere to really bolster this team in both Sabonis and Fox's prime.
To be honest, I hate to criticize, but I kind of felt that they rushed into it. Obviously, Domas, you want to keep him, you need to keep him, and obviously it'd be disastrous if you lose him. But I think you would, in this July would be a good time to have addressed that. He wants to stay. He's more. There's clearly you don't want him as a free agent, total free agent, because there are a lot of teams that would come after him. But I still think the Kings could likely keep him, much like the Weber situation. So, so there's that. Yeah, he's tied up now, so that's great. But yeah, I always like to any way you can kind of keep your options open a little bit, and especially with cap considerations.
Mm-hmm.
So few teams have cap room. So if you have cap room, that gives you a chance to get into the free agent hunt. Years ago, like Kings finally got some cap room and got Vlade Divac, which was really an important factor as far as becoming a contender. And so, that's the case now where you just don't have any real room to do much except the mid-level exception. And so there you are. That's the scary thing we've talked before is if you lose Monk, basically you got to try to replace him with a mid-level exception kind of thing. Or the draft, but if you can keep him, you still got the mid-level exception. So you can go get. You probably can get a good player. You're not going to get an all-star, but you can get a good player with that. And then with the draft, that certainly that pick does have value, if not to the Kings, via trade. So anyway, they've got everything's got to break right for this team. When you don't have cap room, you've got to hit on a couple of things to get better in a conference that everybody's getting better.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the putt at the end of Happy Gilmore, where he's got to bounce it off the car and then up through the TV tower. It's got to go perfectly right. You just said it, because there's some questions about whether or not you think a draft, not you specifically, but it's come up in Sacramento, that a draft pick would be in a position at the 13th pick to walk onto this team and truly contribute. And with the draft being, I think it's a good draft. We both said it's a good position for the Kings to be in. Is there not as much time with the Kings timeline to have to take a guy that may need a couple years, 3 years? And does that move you towards looking for that trade like a lot of people are asking for?
Well, I think you should always look for trades, a trade that benefits you.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think you always have to prepare for the draft, because it could, your hands are tied. You can't make somebody trade with you.
Exactly.
but it's also true. You really need to find out the value of that trade or that pick to other teams. And then if there's players that you are confident would step in and be more valuable right away, and they're still reasonably young. I just don't see this team as a team that should go out and try to get a 35-year-old guy for next year, or that sort of thing. But if you could get a proven 27, 28-year-old player, that doesn't hurt your timeline at all. Because he should have five good years, and who looks beyond 5 good years? I don't look past 5 years. I can tell you that. So anyway, yeah, I think that's the key is to find out, identify players you'd like to trade for, and knowing that maybe the pick would be a part of the trade, and see if it has value. But in the meantime, really prepare to take that trade, because the 13th pick, and I've said, their Hall of Fame is full of guys who are picked later than that. It's just every year. The Antetokounmpos and Kawhi Leonards and John Stockton, Karl Malone's, Jimmy Butler, Jokic. It's
those are some pretty good names, Jerry.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the one thing. Living as long as I have and follow the draft forever. It's just amazing, every year. It's like Oklahoma City, Jalen Williams.
Yes.
20-something pick. Obviously, if you did it over, he'd be a top 5 or 6. But every year I guess what I'm trying to say, every year there's a couple of all-stars that are going to be drafted. They may not be in the top 10, but and they may be 1 and 2, or they may be, like 15 and 18 type thing.
Right.
So that's why I say I think this is the kind of draft, in what little I've studied it, is that there really isn't a sure number one. I think that the difference between 15 and 5 is just an opinion.
There you go. Yeah, it's preference, right? It's an opinion, and it's what fits your system the best. You're going to have a different read on different guys.
Yeah.
So it's a great point. I want to take you a different direction. We talked enough Kings and obviously a little bit of draft, but I want to talk about women's basketball for a minute, Jerry. I want to talk about the WNBA. Obviously, you were the GM of the Monarchs. You ended up retiring in 2003, but for a while, the WNBA just it was just there. It didn't seem like many people were paying attention. And now with the influx of exciting talent that people have followed through the college game, what's your take on where the WNBA is at and a resurgence for them?
Well, yeah, it really is. I mean, it's really one of those rare leagues that when I came in, it really was at a high level of popularity for most of the years. And then really after about 2005-06, it really dropped off and has never totally understood it. I mean, I know it's not for everyone, but having said that, I think there's a couple things in play, as you pointed out. I mean, the talent level of the women's game has probably improved at a more rapid rate than the men's game. Because they had further to go. I mean, you're seeing a lot more athleticism, and I would say when I came in the league, very few players could play off the dribble and shoot jump shots, going hard, right, left. Now all of them can do it, just about all the guards, and so that, I mean, obviously Caitlin Clark brought a lot of attention to it, but I think the other part of it, and just listening to Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser on Pardon the Interruption, I mean, I'm a big fan of their show, is they point out, which is rightly so, is that who the top players in the women's game are, because they're there for 4 years.
Yes.
And 3 years, just like the men's college game used to be. You knew Pistol Pete Maravich or Oscar Robertson or Bill Walton, and you knew the great college players of Jabbar that were coming into the NBA. And so right now, for the most part, unless you really start studying, you don't know who the top guys are. Most people haven't seen them.
Exactly.
And then for the women's game, you know who they are, and so you follow their college career. It's easy to follow them then into the next level. And I think that's a real boost for the women's game, and hopefully they'll continue to take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I know the NBA did the special shoot off with Sabrina Ionescu and Steph Curry at the All-Star game. I would expect the NBA is going to start doing a few more things integrating the two leagues. Do you think that's coming down the line?
Well, I think it's more important, I guess, just for me, just being involved. I'd like to see the WB stand on its own more and more.
Okay.
And I mean, I know without the NBA, there wouldn't be a WNBA, and they still are involved financially. But I think the key is for the WNBA to be its own league, profitable, get markets that want teams, get out of the markets that don't really care, that sort of thing. And just, but just like here again, being old is one advantage. I always remember when the league itself, the NBA, was formed. It was formed by hockey owners.
Really?
Yes. The hockey was, they wanted another team in their buildings for the most part to, just have more dates filled.
Sure.
But it was hockey was a bigger deal than professional basketball, NBA basketball at that time, and it was for quite a while. Obviously that's changed, and I know a lot of people out there, young people, would say, "Well, that's ridiculous." Well, no, that's the way it was. The Boston Bruins were way bigger than the Boston Celtics for years and years and years.
Wow. That's incredible. I had no idea, and I'm sure a lot of people here had no idea either. I want to keep touching on that, but first I want to get to the question from Adam. Jerry, is Fox this generation's Mitch Richmond?
That's a great question. I think he can honestly be better. He's got to put together several more years before you can say that. They're very different kind of players, obviously.
Jerry.
Was a shooting guard and off guard. I mean, Fox is primarily a scorer who, too, to some degree, but he's going to guard guards. But I mean, Mitch obviously was a many-time All-Star and Hall of Famer and all that, and I think all that's possible for De'Aaron. I think he just he's had 2 years that you would put up there in Mitch category that Mitch had 6 or 7 of them in his career. So I think that's the only thing I'd say, and not just maintain the level of play that he has, which is outstanding, but I think he's capable more, and I think he thinks he is, and probably get, I think he needs to improve his playmaking, and then, kind of turn down a few of those 3-point shots and get the basket a little more. Yeah, draw some fat. There's just around the edges. I mean, I think he's capable of everything he needs to do. Now that we saw him, second part of the year, he was terrific defensively, and that's part that people forget about Mitch a little bit. He was terrific defender.
Oh boy.
I mean, he'd lock you up and knock you down and hurt your feelings.
The matchups with him and Jordan, I was lucky enough to see one of them in person. I believe it was like 96 or 97, but those two used to battle, Jerry. It was so fun to watch.
It really was. Obviously Jordan was the best, but really probably the second best two guard in the league was Mitch, and Jordan would say that he had him ranked higher than Clyde Drexler because Mitch was much better defensively, and so it was it was a nice, surprisingly a nice matchup. I think always said if Mitch had Scottie Pippen, probably Kings would have been significantly better.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of the first super team, right? To a degree, even though Pippen wasn't at the level of Jordan, they lucked out well. I mean, and they're role players too. Wennington, Kerr, all those guys, Jerry.
Yeah, they had, I still think maybe that was the greatest team I've ever seen. I mean, I think, there's, like I say, there's more parity in the NBA today, and there's probably more great players, but they're spread out more. But, you look at the Showtime Lakers or the Celtics with Mikhail Bird and those guys. I mean, Hall of Famers everywhere. And then, of course, the Jordan Bulls. And I'd even put the Golden State Warriors in that category as well, where you have, 2 or 3 Hall of Fame caliber players. But I don't know that we have that right now. Time will tell, but you have to be a dynasty and Denver won last year. They're not going to win this year. And whoever wins this year may be a one and done. So I think it's good, but it's different.
Definitely. Dirk, I'm going to get to your question about Monk. We'll put that up in a second. We were talking about if Monk was to leave last night, and we were talking about what is his true value to this Kings team. And don't get me wrong, leading scorer off the bench the last 2 years in the NBA. The Kings aren't the Kings without him, but in some ways, is the lack of production from your starting lineup maybe why we're overvaluing Malik Monk and how important, especially last year, he was to the Kings?
That's a good question. I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, I do know the only way I'd look at it is, okay, start naming your best players.
Sure.
And he's one of your 4 best players. And you don't get better by losing, a team that really is pretty thin, and so he's valuable. He's probably more valuable to the Kings than he is probably other teams. Now, the reason he might make more money for the other teams is because it's just money and they have it to spend. They're like I say, that's always been a key to improve is through free agency, is keeping your own and getting somebody else's.
Yes.
Which is even the best way to get somebody else's, but you don't improve if you can't keep yours. And so I think that I always said that I was convinced losing Bogdanovich a few years ago was a mistake.
Oh yeah.
Good player. Didn't mean that he was probably overpaid and you'd had to overpay to keep him, but you could trade him. Teams liked him.
Exactly. It's
so
one of the
you lost an asset for money, and you can't. The old thing is, you can't throw dollar bills out on the floor to play. You got to put players out there.
Yeah, that would, the dollar bills would not work, Jerry. I just don't
can't
see
score
that
a lick.
playing
Can't
well.
score a lick.
Yeah, can't score a lick, not at all. So just to follow up on that, Dirk's asking, if Monk leaves, who do you think is best suited? And I'm going to tweak this question. Who do you think's best suited currently on this roster to maybe step up and fill that role? And who's a guy you like that's not currently on this roster that the Kings could target in free agency?
I'm not sure that you can, with the current roster, that anyone really fills a role. I mean, I think you can sort of fill it maybe a couple of ways. You bring Herter off the bench, and Davion, together you get, a combo version of Monk, maybe.
Yeah, by committee.
But you don't. So that I don't. I mean, I wouldn't feel very confident starting the season thinking you're going to be better by doing that. But yeah, I think you have to look elsewhere, try, and then so you're looking at the mid-level exception, try to find somebody, that fits that role. I mean, if T.J. McConnell were younger, I'd try to get him somewhere.
Oh man,
but he's 32, and that I think so that. But yeah, there's some interesting guys out there. I mean, I like some guys that are kind of combo wings that are free agents. For instance, Derek Jones Jr. I love him.
Yes.
But Dallas, well, he's going to be a free agent, and they can't pay him an awful lot. It's a little bit like the Monk thing. Well, he wouldn't replace Monk, but he'd replace somebody.
Exactly right.
And I think Kelly Oubre, of Philly, like him. He's been a little bit of a dingbat here and there, but he's a gifted athlete that was a high lottery pick for a reason. And, I know Philly wants to keep him, but same kind of problem. And Caleb Martin for Miami.
I like him.
Real lively, athletic, tough-minded guy. Kind of a Josh Hart type guy. I don't know if anybody can be Josh Hart. But so there's guys there, and I think you might have to look in that direction rather than trying to say we got to find somebody like Monk. I don't know. But you'd have to. You can get better differently, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. I mean, when the Kings lost Bobby Jackson, it wasn't, hey, we need to find our next Bobby Jackson. We need to find our next sixth man, right? Because those guys are all so different.
Well, that was a year, too, that they'd lost Tony Delk to Phoenix, who was a really good player, good sixth man, and everybody's disappointed and went and got Bobby Jackson. And at that time, fans were really upset. Why didn't you keep? Well, Bobby turned out to be better. Now we didn't really know for sure he would, but we thought he would. I mean, Bobby was. That's why I say I'm probably a little more patient with guys like Davion because, Bobby was on about 4 teams before it really clicked in, just like Doug Christie. He was basically with about 3 or 4 teams before he became Doug Christie.
Yeah.
And like I say, other than the real just natural stars who just step in there, and I get that, and I know that's the way with Keegan. Everybody wants him to be, the finished product already, and who wouldn't? But
it takes time.
It takes time, and like I say, there's even Wembanyama, as great a talent as he is, they won 2 more games with him. So
the adjustment period, it takes that time, and it's the experience that you got to get, especially if you're overseas. In Wemby's case, transitioning to the NBA. I mean, I guess Euroball and the NBA is getting closer probably than it ever has been because the NBA is so much about the 3 ball. But you bring up some great points, Jerry. Now we're going to transition. We're done with the heavy lifting, okay? But we're going to have We're going to have at least a little fun here. I'm not sure if you're going to think it's fun, but I think you will in the end.
Oh, we'll see.
One of Grant and I's most famous segments is one where I gave him some names, I gave him some different things, and I asked him to describe what they meant to him in one word or one sentence. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do some name association with you, and it's going to be all over the board. We'll do a couple of them and then we'll get you out of here.
Okay.
The first one, French Lick, Indiana.
Midwest top resort. People really, it's amazing how few people know that. All you have to do is Google it. French Lick, Indiana Resort, 2 4-star, 5-star hotels, 2 championship courses built by the all-time famous golf designers Donald Ross and Pete Dye. I grew up having casinos, and it's a little town, but it's a great, it's a great resort area. So I was very, very lucky to, and of course high school basketball was a religion there at that time. Still is to some degree, but not the same, of course. So anyway, and there was 2 outstanding players come out of there. The other guy, besides myself, I can't remember the other guy's name.
Yeah, I forget that too.
Yeah, he hit and miss.
Something Sparrow, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, something kind of foul.
Yeah, if I remember right, I think he has a problem falling through roofs or falling through basements.
Yeah, he's getting better at those commercials. I was going to say, I thought he and Jordan's McDonald's were great.
Oh, those were so good.
Those were so good. So yeah, he's kind of finding another way to make a buck, which isn't surprising.
Absolutely. All right, next one, Coachy. For those that don't know, Pete Crow.
Basketball genius. I think he's the smartest basketball man I've ever been around, and
wow.
Just we'd take long walks together on the road and everything, and just listen to his stories and his insights. Remarkable. We exchanged a lot of stories, mostly his stories, some mine, but his were better. Great man, great coach, genius.
How did that team here in Sacramento, what was the relationship and the role like between those guys and Pete? Because he kind of brought in, I don't want to say the Princeton offense, but it seemed like if he talked, everybody listened.
One thing about Pete, he didn't tell you something unless it was correct. He gave information that players could use, and I think that's always the case. Is they'll respect you if you tell them, if they know what you're talking about. And Pete did, and he didn't just flap his gums. He might not talk to a guy about anything specifically for a week, any player, and that's kind of his role. Rick Adelman was very comfortable letting Pete, basically visit with players or consult with players about certain things. Had a lot of, which was a credit to Rick. He didn't feel threatened at all. And as you said, the Princeton offense, well, we used parts of it, but Rick really adjusted it, because the Princeton offense is with one high post guy. People forget that, and with Rick, he used 2 up on the elbow. And but it's a lot of the same philosophy. So I would say Rick probably doesn't get enough credit for that, but I mean, it was also a lot of great ideas and stuff from Pete. But that's what coaching is. Learn from others, take from others, adjust. Fit your talent, and probably both Pete and Rick, you couldn't find guys any better than those 2.
Is that where I should say coaches run into problems in the NBA now, where it's not fit your system to your talent, it's rather make the players adjust to your system?
Yeah, I think that's always been the problem. I think, and you see, it's like Rick Carlisle at Indiana. I would have never thought I'd see him let go of the calling every play.
Running and gunning.
He was old school, totally. And now you can't see a more free-flowing game than that. But that's coaching. In other words, Rick, smart guy, realized, what worked for me with Dirk Nowitzki and Jason Kidd and those guys is not this team. It can't do that.
Yes.
We've got to play differently, and so that's But I think that to me, we've talked about this before. But as a coach, only two things. Once your roster is established, only two things you can do is motivate them as best you can and utilize them correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the utilization is really where a lot of the problems come. Putting guys. Well, I always say, like for instance, I was thinking about this, and you mentioned it earlier. Dante DiVincenzo.
Yes.
When he was with the Kings, he was a little bit of a disappointment. Wasn't a bad player, but he just wasn't what you were looking for. Went to the Dubs, same thing. He's a little better there, but not good enough that they thought they needed to keep him. Now look at him at New York, the way he played. Now I don't know that he'd play that way here or Golden State, but the way he played in New York, he's exactly what the Kings need.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
A scrappy, tough guy, make shots. Balls out player. Now, part of it, I'm convinced, is the situation. He's utilized correctly, but he's playing with his Nova boys. They're in a comfort zone. Coach Tibbs is, hard as, steel, but that's who they are. And so it fits. But it's also true those Nova guys, Jalen Brunson was a second-round pick by Charlotte. It goes to Dallas, and they don't see how great he can be. Kind of this 2020-some version of Isaiah Thomas that we had and let go for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing. And then Josh Hart was there for anybody. But
my God, that killed me.
But as a group, those three are just terrific.
Yes.
But that's the, kind of getting back to the utilization. You couldn't utilize them any better than they are being utilized.
Exactly. I think Dante would have been a pig in mud the way that the Kings played at the end of the season when they were playing physical, they were utilizing pick and rolls. That's East Coast basketball to me, Jerry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The way, and I think, before he got hurt in Milwaukee, I think they felt he was on that path. But then the injuries, and then he never quite fit with the two teams before New York. But no, he's a baller.
He's a baller. Yeah.
He's a baller, and you're right. The way the Kings were playing at the end of the year, he would have been a difference maker.
Big difference maker. Jerry joining us for just a few more moments on Jerry Reynolds Tuesday. I got a couple more for you.
Okay.
2002.
Heist of the century.
Heist of the century.
Yeah. Sacramento Kings would have been an NBA champion if the 6 game were officiated fairly, and it wasn't. And and people say, well, they had Game 7. Yes, they did. Mm-hmm. And Kings didn't win it fair. They lost it fair and square. But the point is, it doesn't make any difference if they won Game 6. So there didn't need to be a Game 7. They just didn't get credit for winning 6, but they won 6.
They did win 6. That was talk about needing replay there. That would have been a flagrant 2 right on the spot. Insane.
Well, that'd been one of those things with a 2-minute report. They could have had a 12-minute report. It's a 12-minute report. There's 37 missed calls.
Oh boy.
And 33 favor the Lakers.
That'd be that would have been like a Jerry Reynolds middle school report, probably about 17 pages.
Well, that was like, when I coached in college, I'd officiate some of the scrimmages just because I wanted to do certain things. I'd have my assistant coach, and we'd just cheat the heck out of the starters, and they wouldn't always even know it. You call fouls away from the ball, 3-second calls. So if you really want to control a game as an official, and everybody's on board, you can do it. So I learned that. I don't get me wrong. I think officials try to be as fair as they can for the most part. I believe that. I think it's an impossible game to call, number one.
It's a hard one.
but it's anyway. That was one of those things I proved to myself anyway.
You didn't need to do a ton of research to figure that one out. That's smart about doing that with your guys, though, because for people that don't know, almost every college practice, at least ours, you have officials there for the most part. The coaches
Yeah.
will have officials brought in. So I like that you were doing that. I've asked Grant this on the record on a show, and I want to ask you, what would a championship ring have meant to you that year?
Well, I'll tell you, it's just going to sound egotistical, which of course I am, but I was fortunate enough, in junior college, we won a national championship.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a 4-year school, we won a national championship. I was general manager of the Monarchs, we won a national or world championship.
Yep.
And so, had we been able to win, just for me personally, it would have been every level.
Wow.
That I'd been involved in, I would have had a championship ring.
Wow.
So that leaves a little hole there. And I was also involved with the Olympics in 2000, and we won a gold medal. I was on the selection committee and all that sort of thing for the women. And so anyway, so those were things, and I wasn't necessarily thinking of that at the time. I just, wanted to, just wanted to win a championship. But as years went on, looking back, it's like, wow, that would have been neat.
I mean, it's still an incredible career in basketball, incredible. But I get that. That's not selfish. It's the Grand Slam. It's the cycle. It's these guys that do everything that can be done in a sport. And I mean, you're one of those names that means that.
Yeah, like I say, my role wasn't like Rick Adelman's or Jeff Petrie's, but I had a significant role.
Sure.
And, wasn't near the role I had as a college coach, but it was still, I know that I was involved in things. So it would have, especially like I say, as a lot of the older fans out there would know, you start looking back at things saying, damn, I wish I'd done that a little different, or this would have went different, that sort of thing. I probably get more pissed about the 2002 thing every year. It doesn't actually get better. I mean, I think honestly, it pisses me off even more.
Yeah, I'm with you because it was, I mean, one, us as fans, we weren't in the trenches like you guys were. We hear about how that team was different. We hear how it was a once in a generation team. Those guys loved each other and you guys were a close knit group. And I felt like that team and correct me if I'm wrong, they listened. Not every team listened. And, I don't know. It just felt like everybody had.
Yeah, there's an old saying I learned. Jack McCloskey is an old friend that was the general manager of the Detroit Pistons, and I'd known him back from college days. And he told me, he said, you'll never have a championship level team until you have a team off the floor as well as on the floor. And I think that's really true. And I mean, we really had a team. I mean, with Jeff and myself, Wayne Cooper, everybody got along, the coaching staff, Rick Adelman, Elston Turner, Coach Carell. I mean, everybody was pulling the same direction. Now, it sounds easy, and you want to think every team is like, but it's not true. I've been with a lot of situations in Sacramento where a lot of different directions were being pulled and people pointing fingers at somebody other than themselves, that sort of thing. So, but there are still things you can't control. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a workplace. I mean, there's people watching right now that have those things where a boss is pulling you one way or coworkers pulling another way. I just think it's special because the egos are different when you get to that level. Everybody that's in that building has accomplished something. And the fact that you all collaborated and again, you guys were like a family. You hear that word so much, Jerry, family.
Yeah, but it was really true. I like I was saying, worked for Jeff all those years, and I don't think we ever had a bad day. I mean, we disagreed on some things, but it was never, just never went any further. And I think this guy's a little better than that guy. What do that and that's just the respect of the situation. So and I appreciated at the time the team itself and the team off the floor itself. I knew it was really special, but I didn't realize how special. I mean, it's like a lot of people, you'll be in a work environment that's really
Sure.
good, and then you start taking it for granted, and then you get in another situation like, holy crap, the old grass isn't always greener. That is very true.
There you go. All right, last one, and we'll get you out on this. Sacramento.
Great place to live. Of course, I live in Roseville, but I mean that Sacramento area. I just there's a reason it's one of the top growth areas in America. Uh, it great place to raise a family. Climate's good, not too big. Uh, I just can't imagine, living anywhere else, even with some of the ridiculous taxes and political stuff that goes on. And I mean, it really is, but it's just amazing how good it is in spite of that.
Yeah.
And I just, I'm proud to be a Hoosier, but I would have no desire to live there again. It's probably makes me appreciate California and even more, having grown up in the Midwest and going through some of the stuff, that you do without even thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I can't relate, but I can imagine you hear about all the time. But Sacramento is a pretty cool spot, even though we're probably being taxed right now for saying too many words. Somehow we don't know what AI is listening.
Yeah, there may be one coming. They're gonna.
I've got you covered today, Jerry. It's all right.
Yeah,
Taxes on me.
Appreciate
it. Thank you so much for coming on today. Jerry Reynolds is Jerry Reynolds Tuesday around here. It's not even the King's Court. It's Jerry Reynolds Tuesday.
Well, a lot of fun as usual. Appreciate all the good questions, and hope fans out there enjoyed it, and see you next Tuesday.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it as always. Be well till next Tuesday.
Thanks.
All right. That is Jerry Reynolds. You guys know it's always a great conversation. I wanted to take it a different way. I'm telling you to, with the open forums and all that, that's kind of what we used to do. And you can take the open forum any way you want, but we can only talk so much. Who's the best draft pick? Who should the Kings get? Sometimes there's more to it than that. I mean, think about that response you got from Jerry. I know Jerry personally. We go to lunch, we hang out, but that to hear the candidness about 2002, not just how hard it was for the city and for them because they put so much into that team, and Jerry did a lot behind the scenes with that team, as he hinted at. But just personally, Grant's answer to that ring was everything. Having that ring, the thought of possibly giving that ring to his father, NBA champions, because although they weren't on the court, they're as big of a part of that, organization as anybody else. And for that team, that family, that was a rough thing. For this fan base, that was a rough thing. But great stuff from Jerry Reynolds. I know I did not get in as many questions. I got in the ones that I saw. Let's get through the chat a little bit. Haunted Horse in the house. What's up? I know you were here before. My boy Jay in Humboldt. I saw that name in there. Jay, how the heck are you doing? First time in the King's Court. Happy to have you here. Corn Dog getting some more love in the chat. Let's see. It's extremely difficult for a small market team to win. The window is so small. Yeah, it is, Dirk. But the target of the new CBA is just that for small market teams. They want to even out the playing field, at least when it comes to free agency and it comes to trades. The big thing was the buyouts and the veterans minimum and the different loopholes that some of the bigger markets were using to, bring in that, bolster the bench, bring in the reinforcements for those playoff and championship runs. Getting some, Jay, you're being a knucklehead now. Go Athletics. You an A's fan, Jay? I didn't know that. Sacramento A's. Dennis, it's interesting that you said Sacramento A's because they have filed a few trademarks around that. As you know, they've said it's not going to be the Sacramento A's. It's just going to be the A's while in Sacramento. I am not sure which way the A's will go. You never know. That organization's a mess. Denios, that's right. Not too far. Roseville utilities are cheap. We're getting some utility smack. Yes, Dane, Jerry Tuesdays. Thank you indeed. I will pass that along to him. Did Jerry make any playoff predictions, Dirk? I think he had a couple bundled in. He thinks that Boston is probably moving on, and he did say he thinks Minnesota probably represents the West. He didn't say it perfectly like that, but we have plenty of time for those series to play out before we get Jerry's picks. Let's see. Haunted Horse. Wait a minute. Are you growing a mustache? I don't know. It's the off season. I'm trying stuff out. And by the way, all of you are usually like the audit committee when it comes to facial hair, shaving, haircuts around here. When I decide to do what I do, I've had people say your mustache isn't even. No, I haven't gotten patchy. Yeah, I haven't gotten patchy, but yeah, I don't know, Haunted Horse. We're doing something different right now. Let's see. Yeah, well, here's the thing. If we want to talk about the A's for a second, Dennis, the A's don't know what they're going to do. I get the argument from A's fan about the A's coming here and not being happy about it because of their owner. I mean, think about if the Kings, okay, when the Maloofs jerked Sacramento around, they're like, oh, we're gonna keep the team here. We're building the arena, and then the next thing you know, oh, we're pulling out of that. We're not building an arena. We're selling the team, right? And then it's Anaheim, and then that doesn't work out. Then it's Seattle. What ultimately happens? Here we freaking stay. I said freaking so many times yesterday. I don't know why I did that. For anybody that's a fan of that word,
I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
We're going to try to drop that one from the vocabulary. So that is probably the last freaking you will hear on the King's Court. Not a great word to be saying. But getting back to the conversation, like what if the Maloof said, okay, well, Seattle's going to work, but we got to stay in Sacramento until we finish renovating the arena. Would you go to games? Seriously, would you go to games? I don't think a lot of you would. In fact, I don't think I would. At that point, you are not the Sacramento Kings anymore. And it's kind of like, the whole out of sight, out of mind thing. You ever had a breakup where maybe you were doing long distance and that breakup's just a little bit easier because you're likely not going to be running into that person on the streets. It's not like you got to sit in class with them all day. You get what I'm saying. Having the Kings here would have been rough. Now, back to the A's situation. What does A's fan do? They're in that situation right now. They're attending some games in Oakland, right? But now Sacramento. Here's why Sacramento makes that deal. It's good for Sacramento. But you could also criticize and say, are you getting, or ask the question, are you getting in bed with somebody that's not a great person, doesn't run a business well, I think would be the right word, because this Las Vegas thing, I don't know what to make of it. First off, Vegas does not want the A's. They've said it. Council members have said that. Las Vegas, although they have the Las Vegas 51s, which is a triple league team, it is not a pro baseball city. It's not. Sacramento, and I disagree with Grant here on this. I think Sacramento could be a really good pro baseball city. I think it's a sport Sacramentans have supported for a long time. You're either an A's fan, you're either a Giants fan, or maybe you're a fan of another team somewhere else in America because you're a transplant here out to Sacramento. But people show up. When you had the Giants farm team being the River Cats, people showed up. Before that, when it was the A's, and now back to the A's, people show up. So not only are you going to have Sacramento fans, just baseball fans showing up. And here's the big thing: ticket prices. What's that going to be? It's an intimate park here in Sacramento. It is. If you are, count me in, I guarantee that when the big teams come to town, I'm going to want a piece of that action. I'm going to want to go check out some or maybe a few of those games, especially some of the teams I rooted for growing up that aren't from this area. But you know who else is going to check out those games? Sacramento for these next 2 or 3 seasons, whatever it is. It's going to be a destination game for many fans because baseball fans, some of them travel. A lot of them like to see every ballpark in Major League Baseball. A lot of them will make one road trip a year. A lot of them go to spring training. So it's not that far-fetched that you can go and get basically a spring training environment yet during a Major League Baseball game. And imagine this. Imagine if the A's made the damn playoffs. Playoffs? Think about that. If they made the playoffs, what's that look like? That's going to be a hot ticket. Now, regardless of all that, because the size of the stadium, here's what's going to happen. Sacramento, restaurants, there's this, you know what? I'm not going to go there. I'm going to leave it alone. It's too close to politics. We're going to push that to the side. But it's going to become restaurants thriving down there. If there was ever a hope of Sacramento finally getting an all-star game in the NBA, maybe, just maybe, when city officials get to see what it looks like year-round when that downtown area is populated, and it's going to be times 2 because you have overlap with baseball and basketball. And the Sawyer Hotel, that's where most of the teams stay. Actually, all of the away teams stay when they come to play the Kings. So my guess is they're at Sawyer, which again, just a stone's throw away from Raleigh Field or Sutter Health Park. That's going to help the economy a lot. Now, does that help the economy enough to where infrastructure can continue to grow? We know the hotels are the problem here in Sacramento when it comes to hosting an all-star game. But getting back to the A's organization, they had up until, I believe it was the middle of the winter, start of spring, late winter, to have those drawings out. I don't know the exact story behind it, but I know those drawings of the ballpark they released in Vegas were done at the last minute. And I do know the casino that was going to or is supposed to be the land where the ballpark is built at, they've closed their doors. The A's are on the can't say that word. Can't say that word. Look at what this guy.
Watch what this guy here does to this guy here.
So look at what's going on now. It's still up in the air. And now that land, that casino that quit taking room bookings, that closed its doors for construction, the A's are paying every day in some way or another for that land. And it's going to come back to bite them in the arse if they don't make a decision soon. And what I'm afraid of, A's fans, you're not going to like this. I think Sacramento fans going to show out for Major League Baseball in Sacramento. I really do, because Rivercats games are already very well attended, considering some of the times during the week. You have field trips, those kinds of things. The field trips probably aren't going to happen with the A's, might to a degree, maybe out on the grass if it's a cheaper ticket. But I'll ask you guys, are you going to an A's game if you've got to pay $50 to sit on the grass at Raleigh Field? Are you going to an A's game and paying $75 for an upper deck ticket? And I get the upper deck at Sutter Health Field is probably equivalent to the top of the first deck in a major league stadium. But what are you going to do as a fan? I think fans are going to show out. I think tourism will absolutely go up. And there could be an argument. Baseball stays in Sacramento. Now, the question is that the owner that you want owning a team in Sacramento? What I could see happening is the Oakland A's being sold and something changing. But we're talking big. We've got a lot of things out there. When it comes to that, we've just got to let time take its course and see what that transition is going to look like. Certainly, There's going to have to be modifications, some upgrades to the stadium to make it major league ready, because I can promise you those guys are not going to want to walk to center field walk from center field where the locker room's out there to get to the dugout and back. That is going to have to change. All right, let's get ready to wrap up the show. Grant's going to be here at 5 o'clock, open forum, and then him and I will be back at 8 o'clock after the Celtics and the Pacers game 1. Let's get some last-minute comments in here. Just noticed that being a season ticket holder for the Kings, that they did a lot of promotion this year for the River Cats. Good. Really good. They should. It helps both sides out. Keep that trash. Oh, okay. Jay and Humboldt's causing some issues in the chat. These Humboldt guys, man. The joke was if a Met was sent down, they went to Las Vegas. What a deal. Well done, Patrick. Well done. Cheap trip to Vegas on the team. No doubt. A's in Sacramento. Oh, hell yes. Romanowski says, so there you go. Dennis, hey, Rhino, would you hear about the expansion team? What have I heard about the expansion team? Which expansion team are you talking about? You talking about soccer? You talking about the possibility of some hardball? What are we talking about? Hockey? Which hockey, I think hockey would be damn exciting in Sacramento. I just don't think G1C is really made for it. Dennis, did you hear about the baseball? Yes, we knew about. I knew because Grant brought me into the loop on it, but we knew about 2 weeks before the city and the A's announced that it was a done deal, that the A's would be calling Sacramento home for a couple of years. So yes, we did hear about that early. Now, if you're talking about a different expansion, I'm going to need some more explaining. I don't want to say anything that is trusted information or not sourced. Earthquakes versus Republic tonight. There you go. Very good. Yeah, I know. Jungle Tourette's. All right, let's get out of here before this thing turns itself on its head, especially because we had such a great show with Jerry Reynolds. Appreciate the support, y'all. If you have not already, make sure that you subscribe. If you don't like that, we are pumping up the programming here on the channel. You can expect probably 3 shows the rest of the week every day. So we'd love to have you in here. As always, you can call our shows. We'll be opening those lines up tonight. And you've got an open forum with Grant starting in just about an hour and 20 minutes. So looking forward to that. And by the way, all of the audio of the King's Court is up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Pretty crazy that the King's Court under basketball, the category basketball, domestically is 237th ranked on their charts. Pretty damn cool. Pretty damn cool. Thank you to each and every one of you. And I guess in the Philippines, we're 133rd under the basketball category. So shout out to the Philippines. Appreciate all of you. I have to go do a King's Court live over there sometime. But also, you get a Monday morning shoot around on the King, or you get an every morning shoot around on the King's Court. My initial thoughts of whatever happened from the night before or whatever's bugging me. And then on the weekends, you get all new episodes. Basically, you get daily episodes from us. So really looking forward to that. I've got some exciting things in the works with both the Kings and the Stockton Kings that hopefully pretty soon be able to announce here on the air. So stay tuned for those. Looking forward to that announcement. And thank you all again for being here on Jerry Reynolds Tuesday. He is absolutely the best. We are going to start opening it up to you a little bit on Tuesdays, where you can call in with a question for Jerry. I'll tell you more about that next week. But again, thank you all so much for being here. Tadora, hit it.
Holy moly, Jimbaboli.
That a girl. Go Kings. Light the beam. Make sure you're back right here at 5 o'clock on If You Don't Like That with Grant for his open forum show. And then 8 o'clock tonight, Grant and I will be back taking your calls and talking Celtics and Indy, the Pacers. All right, make it a good one. Court is dismissed.